The courtroom in Chicago's family court hummed with the quiet tension of routine proceedings, its high ceilings and polished oak benches bathed in soft morning light streaming through tall windows, casting long shadows that seemed to carry the weight of countless broken families. And at the center of this somber stage sat Judge Elena Brooks, a 40-year-old black woman whose stern demeanor and sharp brown eyes had earned her a reputation as a no-nonsense arbiter of justice. Her robes, a shield for the grief she'd buried 8 years ago when her newborn son was declared stillborn. A loss that had hardened her heart and fueled her relentless dedication to protecting children in the system. But today, as she flipped through the thick manila folder of case number 4723, something stirred in her chest. A flicker of unease she couldn't place, the file detailing the troubled history of 8-year-old Malik Thompson, a black boy whose small frame sat hunched in the front row, his navy hoodie too big, his dark eyes fixed on the floor as if willing himself invisible. His current foster parents, Richard and Evelyn Harper, a wealthy white couple in designer attire, seeking to relinquish custody after just 5 months, citing unmanageable behavior in a tone that dripped with clinical detachment. And as Elena scanned the documents, 7 foster homes in 8 years, each marked by vague notes of withdrawal or emotional outbursts, her fingers paused on the phrase, "Circumstances of entry into foster care unclear." A red flag in a system she knew too well was riddled with gaps, the courtroom quieter than usual, the air heavy with anticipation as Richard Harper adjusted his cufflinks and spoke first. "Your Honor, we've tried everything: private tutors, therapy, extracurriculars, but Malik refuses to engage. He's disruptive, distant, and frankly, a burden on our household." His wife nodding, her diamond necklace glinting as she added, "He has nightmares, hides in corners, and won't even speak to us most days. We have other children to consider," their words slicing through Elena's composure, her jaw tightening at the familiar script of foster parents abandoning children they deemed defective. And she glanced at Malik, noting the way his small hands clutched a worn photograph, his knuckles pale with tension, the image too crumpled to discern from her bench. But something about his stillness, his refusal to look up, tugged at a memory she'd long suppressed. A hospital room, a nurse's cold voice, a nursery left empty. And Elena pushed the thought aside, forcing her voice to remain steady. "Mr. and Mrs. Harper, you signed a commitment to provide a stable home. Can you specify what efforts you've made to address Malik's trauma?" Her question pointed, catching Evelyn off guard, who stammered, "We've given him every opportunity. New clothes, a private room, but he just shuts down. He's not like our other foster children." The implication clear in her tone, a subtle racial undertone Elena had heard too often, and as she pressed further, "Have you consulted his trauma specialist about these behaviors?" Richard interjected, "With all due respect, Your Honor, we know when a child fits. Malik doesn't," his arrogance sparking a flare of anger in Elena's chest. But before she could respond, Malik's social worker, Carla Evans, a weary woman with a thick binder and kind eyes, spoke up. "Your Honor, Malik's selective mutism and night terrors are consistent with severe trauma. He's been through multiple placements, each ending for similar reasons." Her voice laced with frustration at the system's failures. And Elena's gaze returned to Malik, her heart aching at his hunched shoulders. The photograph gripped like a lifeline, and she softened her tone. "Malik, would you like to share anything with the court?" expecting silence. But the boy lifted his head, his eyes meeting hers for the first time. And in that moment, something electric passed between them. A recognition she couldn't name, his gaze so familiar it sent a shiver down her spine. And then, in a voice small but clear, he stood, the photograph trembling in his hands, and said, "You're my mom, the words detonating in the courtroom like a thunderclap, gasps rippling through the sparse audience of clerks and attorneys, the Harpers exchanging alarmed glances, Carla freezing mid-note, and Elena gripping her bench, her breath stolen as the world tilted, memories flooding back of a hospital bed, a doctor's somber face, and a death certificate she'd signed in a haze of grief. And Malik repeated, "Stronger now? You're my mom. I know it's you." His voice cutting through the murmurs, pointing to the photograph, and as it slipped from his fingers, fluttering to the floor, Elena caught a glimpse, a younger version of herself, smiling, her hand on her pregnant belly, a photo she hadn't seen in years, taken weeks before her supposed loss, and the courtroom spun, her professional facade cracking as she struggled to process the impossible. The Harper's attorney, a slick man named Gregory Voss, jumping in. "Your Honor, this is clearly a delusion." The boy's instability is well documented. But Elena raised a hand, silencing him, her voice trembling but firm. "I need to see that photograph." And as Carla retrieved it, handing it to her with a look of stunned empathy, Elena's fingers shook, tracing her own image, the garden outside Riverside Memorial Hospital, her smile radiant with hope, and she whispered, "Where did you get this?" Malik's eyes never left hers. "Miss Lena gave it to me. She said you were my mom, that they took me away." His words a dagger to her heart, stirring memories of a nurse's hurried insistence that she not see her baby's body, that it would hurt too much, and Elena's mind raced. The coincidence too precise, the timing too perfect. 8 years since her son's death, and now this boy, with eyes that mirrored her own, claiming a truth she'd never dared imagine, and she managed to say, "Court is in recess. We'll reconvene in 2 hours," her voice barely holding as she retreated to her chambers. The photograph clutched in her hand, the Harper's protests fading behind her, and alone, she sank into her chair, her breath ragged, opening a locked drawer where she kept a small keepsake box, a tiny blue blanket, a hospital bracelet, a death certificate for her son, named Caleb, who she'd been told hadn't survived a complicated delivery. And as she compared the photograph Malik carried to her own memories, the similarities were undeniable. The curve of her smile, the setting sun behind her, a moment frozen before her world collapsed, and questions swirled, how could this be? When she'd seen paperwork, signed forms, grieved for years. But Malik's certainty, his haunting familiarity, cracked open a doubt she'd buried, and she called Carla, her voice urgent, "I need everything on Malik's early records, every detail now." And as Carla promised to dig deeper, Elena contacted Marcus Reed, a private investigator she trusted from past cases, find out about New Beginnings Family Services. It's the agency that first placed Malik. They shut down years ago. But I need their records, their people, everything. Her tone leaving no room for doubt, and Marcus, sensing the stakes, agreed. "I'll start with the hospital where he was born, Riverside Memorial, right?" And Elena nodded. Though he couldn't see, her mind flashing to that sterile room, the nurse, Lena, Malik had said who'd urged her to move on. And as she waited for answers, Elena arranged a private meeting with Malik in a quiet court office, away from the Harper's cold stares, and when he entered, clutching another photo, this one older, showing her leaving the hospital, her face etched with grief, she knelt before him. "Malik, tell me about Miss Lena." And he whispered, "She was at my first foster home. She said you didn't want to give me up, that they lied to you." His words unlocking a flood of pain and hope, and Elena, fighting tears, asked, "Do you know this song?" Humming a lullaby she'd sung to her unborn son, and Malik's eyes lit up. "You sang that to me, in your tummy," Miss Lena told me, and he hummed along, note for note, the melody a bridge across years of separation, and Elena's heart pounded, knowing this was no coincidence, no delusion, but a truth she had to chase. And she promised Malik, "I'm going to find out what happened, okay? You're safe now." Her voice fierce with a mother's resolve. And as Carla returned with sparse files, Malik's entry into foster care at 3 months, no birth certificate. Just a note from New Beginnings citing surrendered by mother. Elena's suspicions hardened, the agency's closure tied to financial irregularities raising alarms, and she instructed Marcus to track down Lena, suspecting she was the key to unraveling a lie that had stolen 8 years of her son's life. And as the recess ended, Elena returned to the courtroom, her gaze locking on Malik, who sat with Carla, his small hand still clutching the photograph. And she knew, regardless of what the record said, that this boy was hers, his eyes a mirror of her own, his courage in speaking up a spark that would ignite a fire of justice, the courtroom no longer just a place of judgment, but a battleground where a mother's love would confront a system that had betrayed them both. The photograph, a silent witness to a truth that refused to stay buried, setting in motion a chain of revelations that would shake the foundations of power and greed. Elena's resolve steeling as she prepared to fight not just for Malik, but for the truth that could bring them home. In the shadowed confines of Judge Elena Brooks's chambers, where the weight of the law pressed heavy on oak-paneled walls lined with leather-bound tomes of precedent and justice, the revelation from Malik Thompson's lips lingered like a storm cloud, propelling her into a frantic quest for truth that unraveled faster than she could grasp, her hands still trembling from the photograph's touch as she dialed Marcus Reed, the grizzled private investigator whose network of contacts spanned the underbelly of Chicago's corrupt corners. His voice gravelly over the line as he agreed to dig into New Beginnings Family Services, the defunct agency that had first placed Malik. "I'll start with Riverside Memorial Hospital. Something smells off about that stillbirth certificate," he muttered. And Elena, her judicial robe discarded for a simple blouse and slacks, paced the room, her mind a whirlwind of suppressed memories, the sterile delivery room, the doctor's averted eyes, the nurse named Lena, who had whisked away the body without letting her see it, and as Marcus's initial report trickled in via encrypted email, detailing the agency's sudden closure amid whispers of financial fraud and missing records, Elena enlisted Carla Evans, the overworked social worker whose empathy for Malik shone through her exhaustion. "We need to talk to anyone from that agency." "Find Lena, she's the key," Elena urged. And Carla, her binder overflowing with case notes, nodded. "I'll pull strings at Child Services. There are rumors of black market adoptions targeting black mothers, faking deaths to sell babies to wealthy white families, a chilling possibility that struck Elena like a blow, systemic racism woven into the fabric of exploitation. And as they met in a nondescript coffee shop away from prying eyes, Marcus arrived with a whistleblower in tow, a former nurse named Lena Hargrove, her face lined with regret and fear, her hands clutching a hidden USB drive. "I couldn't stay silent anymore. I was there that night. Judge Brooks, your son didn't die. Dr. Harlan Wells and the administrator, Victor Kane, faked it, drugged you heavier than needed, and sold him to a couple for $400,000 through New Beginnings," her voice cracking as she detailed the ring's operations, targeting vulnerable black women in labor, single mothers, low-income families, those without strong support declaring stillbirths, while spiriting away healthy infants to private auctions where affluent bidders paid premiums for desirable traits, the babies laundered through forged birth certificates and rapid adoptions, profits funneled through offshore accounts tied to corrupt judges and politicians who turned blind eyes for kickbacks. And Elena, her breath shallow, listened as Lena played recordings from the drive, Wells's voice cold and calculating. "This one's perfect, strong lungs. No complications. The mother won't question it. She's alone evidence that sent chills down her spine, confirming Malik as her son, Caleb, renamed and shuffled through hellish foster homes to cover tracks, the conspiracy deeper than imagined. involving a network of hospitals across states preying on black communities amid societal indifference, and as the pieces connected, Elena faced immediate backlash, anonymous calls warning, "Drop it, or lose him again." Her chambers bugged with tiny devices Marcus swept for, forcing her to relocate Malik to a safe house on the city's outskirts, a modest bungalow guarded by off-duty officers Marcus trusted, where Malik, sensing the danger, shared fragments of his foster horrors, the cold basements where bad kids were locked, the parents who beat silence into him, the nights he clutched the photo Lena had slipped him, whispering, "Find her," his testimony raw and heartbreaking, aiding Marcus in pinpointing key players like Wells, who lived in a lakeside mansion funded by blood money, and as raids commenced under FBI involvement, Elena pulled through judicial connections, agents storming Riverside Memorial at dawn, seizing servers and files that exposed ledgers of over 200 stolen black babies in Chicago alone. The arrest swift Wells in handcuffs, mid-golf swing, Kane barricaded in his office shredding papers, and the media frenzy erupted. Headlines screaming, "Judge's stolen son exposes black baby trafficking ring," protests swelling outside courthouses with signs demanding justice for stolen lives. Black community leaders amplifying the story on social media. Hashtags like #ReclaimOurChildren trending as more mothers came forward, their stillborn losses now questioned. DNA tests confirming matches that shattered families rebuilt on lies. And Elena, testifying before a grand jury in a sealed session, her voice unwavering as she detailed the personal toll. "They didn't just steal my son. They stole hope from black mothers, commodifying our children in a system rigged against us." Her words dismantling the network's facade, leading to indictments of 15 officials, including a complicit judge who'd rubber-stamped adoptions, the broader impact rippling as similar rings surfaced in Atlanta and Detroit, media outlets digging into foster abuses targeting black kids. Elena facing death threats scrawled on her car but refusing protection details, instead channeling fury into alliances with activists who organized vigils for victims. Malik's resilience shining as he drew pictures of monsters in therapy, his art becoming symbols in awareness campaigns, the chapter surging with the adrenaline of pursuit and peril, alliances forged in fire as Elena, Carla, Marcus, and Lena pieced together a mosaic of corruption, the stakes escalating with each raid and revelation, protests turning into marches that blocked streets, demanding audits of every foster agency, the conspiracy's tentacles exposed in boardrooms and back alleys, where wealthy parents lawyered up to deny knowledge, but bank records betrayed them, the unraveling a cascade of justice that highlighted the racism fueling the trade. Black lives commodified for profit. Elena's testimony, a turning point that cracked the empire wide open, setting the stage for a reckoning that would echo far beyond one courtroom, the suspense building like a gathering storm over the city, every shadow hiding a potential ally or enemy. The fight no longer just for her son, but for every stolen child in the shadows of a broken system. With the conspiracy's dark web finally torn open by Elena's unyielding pursuit, and the FBI's relentless raids that had netted over 24 arrests in a single week, including Dr. Harlan Wells cuffed in his white coat mid-shift and Victor Kane dragged from his luxury penthouse with stacks of shredded papers spilling from his hands. Judge Elena Brooks stood in the federal courthouse's grand hall, her black robe swapped for a tailored suit that symbolized her shift from impartial arbiter to fierce advocate. As the trials commenced in a blaze of media scrutiny, headlines screaming "Black babies stolen," "Judge's son exposes nationwide ring across every network," the proceedings a spectacle of accountability where prosecutors paraded witnesses like Lena Hargrove, her testimony electric as she detailed the operation's mechanics faked ultrasounds to confirm complications, sedatives dosed to keep mothers unconscious longer, babies whisked to private jets for delivery to bidders in other states, and Elena, testifying as both victim and expert, her voice steady yet laced with the fire of a mother's rage. This wasn't just theft. It was cultural genocide, targeting black families to commodify our future. her words swaying juries that convicted Wells to life without parole for over 150 counts of kidnapping and fraud, Kane to 40 years for money laundering that had funneled $2 billion through shell charities masking as adoption funds, and the Harpers revealed as serial enablers who had returned 6 other stolen children when they didn't fit, sentenced to 25 years each, their assets seized in a landmark ruling that funneled millions into a reparations fund for affected families, the courtroom erupting in sobs from reunited mothers as Elena gained full, uncontested custody of Malik, the boy she'd once mourned as lost forever. His name legally restored to Caleb Thompson Brooks, in a ceremony where he clutched her hand, whispering, "No more bad dreams, Mom." And as the dust settled, Elena channeled her victory into systemic overhaul, founding the Reclaimed Futures Foundation with seed money from the seized fortunes, a nonprofit that offered free DNA testing to suspicious families, legal aid for custody battles, and therapy programs tailored for trafficked children. Its first initiative, a nationwide database cross-referencing hospital records with foster placements, yielding 300 matches in the first year alone, reunions broadcast in tearful specials where Black mothers like Tamara Ellis, who'd been told her twins were stillborn, embraced teenagers who'd grown up in white suburbia, questioning their roots, the Foundation's workshops, teaching cultural reclamation cooking classes on soul food traditions, history seminars on Black resilience amid systemic erasure to help children like Malik bridge the gaps in their identities, and Malik himself blossomed under Elena's care, his selective mutism fading in group therapy sessions where he led discussions for other recovered kids, sharing art therapy drawings of monsters in white coats that evolved into vibrant murals of superhero moms displayed in community centers, his grades soaring in a specialized school for trauma survivors where he mentored peers on speaking your truth even when it scares you, inspiring a youth arm of the foundation called Voices Unchained, where teens advocated for foster reforms like mandatory cultural competency training for guardians and bans on serial fostering for profit, and Elena, stepping down from the bench to lead full-time, lobbied Congress for the Thompson Act, a bill mandating independent oversight of maternity wards and adoption agencies, her speeches at national conventions drawing standing ovations as she detailed the ring's racist underpinnings. They preyed on Black mothers because society already devalues us. We must rewrite the laws to protect our legacies, the act passing in a bipartisan wave amid public outcry, sparking audits that uncovered similar schemes in 5 more states. And on a personal level, Elena and Malik built rituals of healing, weekend trips to museums honoring Black inventors like Li Chen's architectural forebears, bedtime stories of resilience from Elena's own lineage of civil rights activists, Malik's nightmares receding as he journaled gratitude lists that always started with "my real mom." Their bond deepening through family therapy, where Elena confronted her grief, admitting, "I built walls to survive the loss, but you tore them down with 4 words." And as threats lingered, harassing letters from disgraced officials' supporters, quickly neutralized by FBI monitoring their life, normalized with community barbecues where other reunited families shared potlucks, laughter echoing over plates of collard greens and jollof rice, cultural fusions symbolizing reclaimed heritages, and 1 year later, at the Foundation's inaugural gala in a transformed ballroom once owned by a convicted trafficker, Elena stood on stage with Malik by her side, announcing expansions to international cases of child abduction in Black diaspora communities, the event raising $10 million for scholarships named after whistleblowers like Lena, who now directed victim services, her redemption complete as she mentored nurses on ethical reporting. And Malik, microphone in hand, addressed the crowd, "I was lost, but I never forgot my mom's song. Now we sing it for every kid still waiting," his words sparking a chorus from the audience. A collective lullaby of hope that resonated beyond the walls, the Foundation partnering with tech firms for AI-driven record analysis to speed reunions. preventing future erasures through school programs teaching Know Your Rights for expectant mothers. And Elena, reflecting in quiet evenings with Malik stargazing, marveled at the ripple effect. One boy's declaration had toppled an empire of lies, fostering a legacy of advocacy where black families reclaimed not just children but narratives of strength, the chapter a tapestry of empowerment and forward vision, weaving threads of policy wins, personal milestones, and communal triumphs that celebrated enduring change without revisiting past shadows, the future a canvas where justice painted brighter horizons for generations to come.